It's 7 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Jean is not able to be with us tonight, so I would like to ask the board to elect Chair Pro Tem for the evening.
I'll make a motion to elect Ted as the chair for the evening.
I'll second it.
A motion has been moved and seconded to appoint Ted Bratney as the Chair Pro Tem for this evening's meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Verification of notice.
The meeting was properly noticed.
Okay. And any public comment on any issues which are not on the agenda? Step forward and you can sit at the table there. They're both, one's cable and one's live.
Okay, so
The computer is for later.
Yeah, just,
But you could, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Tom Frederick. I'm the First Assistant Chief of the Cambridge Fire Department. Mark Cook, President of the Cambridge Community Fire and EMS Commission, agreed to sit down with members of the Cambridge Volunteer Fire Department to discuss the proposed amendment to the intergovernmental agreement. This meeting took place on January 16th at 4:30. It was attended by Commission President Mark Cook, Mark McNally from Cambridge, and Steve Zach, attorney for the commission, as well as numerous members of the leadership of the fire department. Much of the discussion was led by Steve Zach, who explained that the commission feels that it needs hands-on oversight of the fire department, the ability to hire, fire, and discipline personnel, and make decisions regarding the operation of the fire department. He and Mark Cook feel that for legal and liability reasons, the commission needs to have and exercise this control over the fire department. The commissioners themselves have no training, experience, or time to perform this function. Additionally, the significant turnover that the commission is subject to further complicates the issue of them taking on this responsibility. Nonetheless, this is what they are pushing. Their position is that this control would be exercised through paid staff working for the commission, although no credible estimates have been provided of what additional cost this would amount to. Mark Cook was quoted in the November 30th edition of the Edgerton Reporter as saying, "I don't have a number, and frankly, that's not the reason we're doing this. It's to create managerial efficiency, proper oversight, and accountability to the commission. The cost seems to be an insignificant factor to the commission. If it were otherwise, why have they not calculated what it would amount to and made that part of the discussion?" Potentially, the additional cost would start with paid consultants to conduct a hiring process for the joint fire and EMS chief. The figure for this hiring process mentioned at our meeting was $40,000 to $50,000. The joint EMS and fire chief would need to be paid significantly more than the current EMS director and volunteer fire chief are paid. Much of the work currently done by these two individuals would be pushed down to subordinates at additional cost. Our discussion also centered around the desire for more integration of the fire and EMS departments. EMS is currently full-time paid. Fire is completely volunteer with a nominal stipend to reimburse us for our expenses. As integration has happened in other larger municipalities where there's an actual need that we don't have here, this results in more paid on-premises staff, more paid on-call staff, and pay by the hour for what is currently volunteer staff. When this increased operational expense is fully realized, it will make buying vehicles and building stations look like a stroll through the park. Get ready to raise your tax levy substantially if the IGA amendment passes. This process is already more expensive than it should be. Steve Zach, the commission's attorney, has been putting hour upon hour working on this, and the last time I had checked, attorneys don't work for free. The Cambridge Volunteer Fire Department feels that the community is best served by the current IGA and leadership structure. We have a chief that understands the volunteers and the mission of the department. We report to the commission regularly, and any issues they wish to raise, we have been happy to discuss and find resolution to. There has been minimal need for them to raise issues with us over the years. We recruit, bring on, and train new members. When we have personnel problems, we have procedures to deal with them. We respond to emergency calls in a timely and professional manner. Our call volume is around 200 calls each year, which does not warrant these changes. We do regular fundraising and are responsible with our funding. We don't present problems for the community or the commission to deal with. And we do this as volunteers at a very reasonable cost to the community. The proposed change has not been requested by us. It is not coming from a need within the fire department, and we have not been involved in creating this expensive proposal. We are able and wish to continue to operate as we have been. There is a nationwide trend toward a drop-off in volunteerism to provide this type of service, and someday we may need to move in this direction, but we are not there now, and we don't foresee being there in the near future. It all comes down to a trade-off: lower cost to operate the fire department as we have, versus more control and expense, or more control by the commission at a greater expense. You get to decide. Please vote the IGA amendment down. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? John? For those of you who don't know, this is John Pounder, our friendly town assessor. You've all had letters from him recently.
Okay, typically we're scheduling our board of review and open book in this time frame, and I'm just here to present that we would be, because of the revaluation, we do not plan on having the board of review prior to June 1st. So I'm suggesting that at the just prior to the regular board meeting in May, which I believe is the 16th, that we set the initial date for board of review, which will just be the meeting to postpone board of review, and at that time we will set the dates for open book and board of review.
Okay. Just as a point of explanation, the dates that we do these things are required or specified under state law. However, when we're undergoing the revision that we are right now, we cannot be complete to meet those, but it is proper for us to have a meeting and say that our role is not complete, set a date when we anticipate it will be complete. And we're going to be in keeping with the state statutes on that, but it allows us to finish all of the work that we need to have done so that we can get into board of review and all the rest of that stuff. So.
My schedule is as stands, that we would plan on having board of review in late August.
Late August, okay.
Which would mean open book in end of July.
Okay.
That would allow the seasonal residents opportunity to discuss the assessment and, if necessary, visit with the board.
Okay. Thanks, John. Any other? Okay. Okay, approval of the minutes from January 17th town board meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the January 17, 2023 town board meeting.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the board meeting from January 17th, the minutes from January 17th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, police chief's report. Jerry?
Don't know if it's good news or bad news, but I have nothing new to report for this month. But a reminder to the citizens of Oakland. I had a call tonight about a parking complaint. And the message left for me was that, I don't know if I should bother you. They were kind of hesitant. A reminder to all the citizens, don't ever hesitate to call. That's what we're here for. That's why they have a local police department. So you either can call the office number, my cell phone anytime. I usually respond within a day. Obviously, if it's an emergency or needs immediate contact the sheriff's office. But just a reminder to everybody.
And for the rest of the board, we had no incidents over the weekend. And Jerry was good enough to come out and check it out and then give me a call at home, and followed up with the sheriff's department, and there were no complaints. And it was a busy weekend with dip for Dozier and stuff. There was a lot of stuff going on, so.
Lots of people out.
Yeah, there were a lot of people out, and very good for that. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Road supervisors report, I don't know. Jeff said, given that it's gonna snow tomorrow, he wants to sleep tonight. So I said, well, doesn't have to come. So they've been doing an excellent job, though. I don't know anybody else, but it's been really good. All right, clerk treasurer report. Susan?
We are preparing for the spring primary next week, next Tuesday. We have our Badger books, which are all those boxes on the table there. We had training for our election workers. And forgive me, Badger books are an electronic poll book. So when you come to vote, instead of signing a paper copy, you will be signing what essentially looks like an iPad. And you'll sign your name and you'll get your ballot just like you always have. What the electronic poll book allows us to do is to report election results in a much more efficient manner. So we are having the Badger books at this primary election when turnout is going to be, we're still going to have a good turnout, but it is going to be less than the spring election or a presidential election. So we want residents and election workers to get used to using this electronic poll book instead of the paper one. Our election workers, all of the election workers that are working next Tuesday have been trained on it, and they seem to catch on very quickly. So I think our voters will as well. We are getting ready for the Johnson Block audit, which happens in March. There's a lot of paperwork to collect for that. We finished property tax collection, and we have a few settlement checks to distribute, and then we're done with property taxes until next fall, or next winter. And then I wanted to mention that there's Board of Review training. There's several dates in the Towns Association magazine, but I'm thinking we will have the virtual option here at Town Hall on Monday, May 1st at 6:30 in the evening, and we'll have the audio-visual available for board members who want to attend. We do need to have at least one member of the board go through training, preferably more.
Yeah, I think given the reevaluation, it's probably time for all of us to attend that if we can work it into our schedules. So, Susan, anything else?
No?
Any questions for Susan?
No.
Okay, we have an item up from the Plan Committee from discussion and possible action on a request to rezone from A1 to A3 to create a 1 acre lot from parcel 022-0613-1833-001 on Rux Road. Felix Jarzik, you want to come on up and tell them? You can bring your legal guys if you want. But We actually, at the plan committee, they submitted probably a 30-page document that addressed every question we could have possibly asked. So we just told the nice attorney man that it was wonderful, thank you, and just let Felix talk. So, very nice. I wish all of the stuff that comes before us were
Thank
as
you.
nice as that. It answered every question. It was very well done.
Thank you.
So Felix, tell them what you want to do.
Well, and I'll let Felix speak in a moment, but there's two important things I want to say on behalf of Felix and his wife Bonnie. We're no strangers to your community. This property was purchased by Bonnie and Felix 21 years ago. And they fell in love with the property well before 21 years ago. They lived on a property located right across the county line and became familiar with this property. And it's always been their dream to build a retirement home on this property, and that's why they bought it 21 years ago. At the time they bought it, 21 years ago, it was not farmland and it was not being farmed, and it has never been farmed during the 21 years that they have owned it. And part of the reason we submitted these maps to you is to demonstrate that the approval of this rezoning will not impair an important goal of your land use plan, which is to preserve agricultural lands. This 35-acre parcel is not, in fact, agricultural land and has never been used as agricultural land. Felix knows more about that property and would like you to explain it to me.
Do you want me to do that, Ted?
Just real quick, Felix.
Yeah, there's actually three parts of the property, 36 acres. There's a north field, which is called the marsh. It's always been called the marsh. It's really wet. Then there's some woods that go at a 45-degree angle. And then there's a south field, which is on Rux Road. And that's where we were asked for the 1 acre rezone in the southeast corner of that part. That's the south field. That's rocky. I mean, you can walk that. It's a hill, and you can walk it, and you can see a 3-inch field stone in there. We've never farmed it. The biggest testament I can give to that it's not plantable or crops won't grow there is from Roger Lehman. And maybe you folks all know Roger, maybe you don't, but he's farmed here for many, many years. Roger owned the land up until 1992 when he sold it to Ron Sweet, and we bought it in 2001. One day I was out when we bought it in 2001. Roger was mowing and that field, the south field, and then also Ronnie Sweet's field. It's only been grass. It's nothing ever has been growing there. And Roger said to me, Felix, you know you bought this land, but you can't grow anything there. And I said, well, I don't have any plans to grow anything. He said, you can't grow in the north field because it's too wet. There's two duck scrapes there. They've now become ponds because it's getting wetter as the years have gone by. Some years we can't even mow it. We try to keep the tag elders down and mow it. He said the south field, it drains too quickly, so nothing will grow. You could plant something, but I've tried. He said, forget about it. You're wasting your time. He had a similar field across from his farm on Cedar Road there. Same thing. Nothing will grow. So from that standpoint, it's never been planted since we've owned it, and it never will be planted in the future. So it's really not, even though it's zoned agricultural land, nothing's going to grow there. My wife and I want to build a house there. It's not for development, it's for us. When we die, we're 80, I'm 80, my wife's 79, she's a Wisconsin gal. When we die, our kids will have it. But we've been wanting to do it for the longest time. Now's the time that we say we have to do our best to try to get it done, and I was so happy that the planning committee approved it unanimously. So hopefully you will do the same. Thank you very much. Any
Thanks,
questions?
Felix. Any questions for Felix?
Is any of this in a wetland area?
No, not where he's wanting to put the lot. The only other little thing, and it's not an issue, and we've already talked about it, is technically the plan says you must have 35 acres left after you take away the 1 acre. and he will have 34.98. And we are comfortable rounding up. We've checked with the county, they're comfortable with saying it's 35. So that was the only thing that needed to be paid attention to. So Plan Committee, as Felix said, approved this. So we would recommend approval to the board.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning from A1 to A3 to create the 1 acre lot on parcel 022-0613-1833-001.
I'll
All those-
second it.
Okay, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Good
motion
luck.
carries.
Thank you.
We'll sign this, send it over to the county, they'll contact you for the next dates.
Super, thank you all
I'm
very
gonna
much.
enjoy the nature back there. That's all I'm gonna do, Jimmy.
You get all your signing stuff
The
there.
nature back there, boy, the deer and the turkey and the cranes and everything. Thank you very much.
Good luck, you guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Felix. Okay, next item is the discussion, possible action on attorney for town legal services. We've been notified by Mary that she's done. The sooner she can leave, the happier she'll be, but she's agreed to hang in there till the end of the month with us. We undertook a bunch of attorneys' interviews. We had, Gina and I, in response to direction from the board in November, created a list of needs and desires and things of attorneys and skills that we were looking for. We did a bunch of screening by looking at websites, talking to local people, and we ended up, we started with about 7 possible. We got it down to 3. We interviewed one from a Madison law firm from Murphy Desmond in Madison, one from Watertown, Al Larson from Bender Larson, et cetera, et cetera. And then Axley attorneys out of the Waukesha office. They have multiple offices. The Waukesha office, we felt a little bit better being more of municipal and more town work taking place out of there. Gene and I did the first 2 interviews together, and then Tom did the other interview with me for the Axley Law. And after discussion with them, we're of the mindset to recommend to you that we retain Axley Law Firm, and it would be with Kathy Gutenkunst, who is the partner in the Waukesha office dealing with municipal and town, and her associate, Michael Van Kluwen, would be the attorneys representing us. And the nice thing is that they have worked together for like 20-plus years as partner and associate. And so they would work together on that, which that very well addresses particularly the need to make sure that we always have someone available to us.
What's her last name?
Stuart Gutenkunst. I'll get it. And it's spelled like it sounds.
Okay.
Sorry. Gutenkunst.
I'd like those spellings for the minutes when you're done.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we would recommend that. I've talked with Mary. She agrees that this is a good choice, and she will work with me to review their contract with us before we would sign that.
Oh, are we going to sign a contract?
Yes, we are going to sign a
We are.
contract because we didn't have one before, more
Okay.
or less.
So if we're going to sign a contract, we want that to come in front of the board, right?
Yes. So we'll approve, but pending the contract, and Mary's going to work on that with me. So
Is
I
she-
did get it late today.
She'll quote an hourly rate and everything, or?
Hourly rate is $250 an hour. And that was pretty much the case. Any of them that we interviewed were $240, $250 an hour. So that's higher than what we're used to.
That's
So-
pretty darn good yet.
Yeah, so we would ask approval so we can go ahead and work on the contract and get that done.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to retain Axley Law Firm. You guys are in the process of finalizing the contract, and that contract will then come back to the board
Should be.
for approval?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Maggie, we've done all of our tough business, so we'll turn it over to you to give us a little information on the proposed referendum for the Cambridge School District.
Hi, everybody.
Hello?
With me this evening is Grace Leonard. She is a member of our Board of Education as well, and so she'll be here to answer questions and take feedback along with me. I have a short presentation. I just wanted to flag for everybody, that this should have arrived on Saturday in your mailbox. And this is also a document that I'll be referring to during the presentation. Just to ground us in sort of the context of who Cambridge schools are, there are about 920 students who attend Cambridge Public Schools. 420 of those students are at the elementary, about 200 are in the middle school, about 260 at the high school. We have 26 students who attend the environmental charter school, Koshkonong Trails, and we have about 11 kids who attended the virtual school that we established last year. There are 148 employees in Cambridge schools. We have an annual budget of about $16 million. And in the fall, we voted to approve the mill rate of $8.88. You can see at the bottom there are all the members of our Board of Education. In January, the Board of Education moved to approve an April referendum. The April referendum will seek voter permission to exceed the revenue limit. Revenue limits were established by state law in 1993. They essentially create the ceiling at which a school district can spend with authority. After that, they need to go to the electors to exceed that revenue limit. So allowing us to levy taxes in excess of that revenue limit ceiling to pay for operating expenses. So this is an operations referendum that includes sort of the cost to continue. Nothing new is being added. It's simply maintaining what we currently have. Where will the referendum funds go? They will be used for curriculum updates, sort of the usual suspects you would expect: math, literacy, social studies, and science. During the global pandemic in 2020, we went rapidly from one-to-one with our devices with students. So those devices now, 3 years later, are in a renewal state, so they're going to need to be updated. Our school budgets haven't increased in 8 years. School budgets are sort of that resource that the principal uses to meet the needs of students in that school. We would be maintaining our class sizes currently. We would be maintaining our school programming, including the many school safety measures that we have put in place in the last decade. We would be working to retain the employees that we have. We have a retention rate of 89%. That's almost double what most public school systems are. I think that speaks to a track record of being a healthy place for adults to work. Also to help us recruit in the case that we need to hire new folks. We would also be sustaining the programs that were continued during COVID funding. So in the COVID sort of 3-year relief funds, we received about $900,000. Those dollars are ending at the end of this year. And so to continue the work that was done with those resources, this budget would include that. All of us have experienced the consumer price index rising and the cost of living increases in the last couple of years. Offsetting those costs is one of the goals of this resource. Again, we also have rising energy costs, and there are facility projects that we have simply delayed. We have half of the roof at the high school to replace. We have parking lot repairs to make, and the HVAC system in the middle school is at the end of its life, and so that needs to be replaced. I think this graph is a really excellent representation of why an operation referendum is needed. If you look at the history of per student spending in Wisconsin, you're going to notice at the right end of that bar graph, the last 6 out of 8 years, there was no additional student aid given by the state legislature in those budget cycles. So in the last biennium, the last 2 years, there was $0. None of us experienced 0 increases in costs. Essentially, in the last decade, we have had rising operations costs, and none of that has been accounted for in that school funding formula. So we simply have to come to our municipality or our voters and ask to exceed that revenue limit of zero, because there were $0 given to us in the last 2 years, and 0 in 6 of the 8 last years. COVID relief funding is expiring at the end of the year, and the expenses that we are projecting are to sustain our operating expenses, simply put. To help contextualize it in the region and in the state, in November, there were over 100 Operation Referendum questions on ballots in Wisconsin. Just to, kind of fill your background knowledge, there's about 420 school districts in the state of Wisconsin. So we are not alone in having these financial troubles. 8 out of 16 Dane County school districts had questions on the November ballot around operations. And in the last 3 years, 14 out of 16 Dane County districts passed operating referendums to exceed the revenue limit. And Marshall and Cambridge are the last 2, and we are on this April's referendum ballot. And I think that represents the stewardship of this Board of Education to make resources last as long as possible. Since we are in Jefferson County, I think it's important to share that 11 out of 13 districts here in Jefferson County held or are holding an operation referendum also in that same time frame. So again, it's the fact that everybody is faced with the same increasing costs and no increasing revenues. The mill rate in Cambridge has declined steadily since 2016, so that graph on the right-hand side shows you that steadily since 2016, there has been a decrease in that mill rate. That's the tax rate to the taxpayer. If there is a successful referendum in spring, you'll notice that yellow box at the bottom says $9.65 would be the proposed mill rate. That's still lower than the mill rate was in 2019. So thinking about the board's job to try to stay and live within their means, there is a track history here of that exact thing happening. So the question of the day is, what is the impact to my tax bill? For the sort of simplicity of showing what that would look like, these are done in $100,000 increments. So it's essentially 77 cents on $1,000 of fair market value. So if you're looking at $100,000, it's $77. $200,000, it's $154. On $300,000, it's $231. The right column gives you that estimated monthly chunk for those of us who escrow our taxes. It often shows up in our monthly expenses in that way. So that's another way to tell that particular story. What have we done to try to mitigate our expenses during the last few years? We've eliminated an administrator position. We currently have 4 administrators in the school district. We eliminated classroom and support staff teacher positions. We paused on filling vacancies. We worked really hard on going after grant applications or opportunities to bring funding into the school district. We did complete an energy infrastructure project that did building envelope and window sealing and some solar panels on the elementary school. And lastly, we prepaid debt that we were carrying since 2012. So in 2012, there was a renovation done to the high school. We paid that off early to save that interest on that debt of over $100,000. Again, trying to do everything we could to sort of make efficiencies and cost-saving measures. The question around if the referendum is not successful, here are some of the actions or all of the actions that the board potentially will need to take. Eliminating 10 plus employees, increasing our class sizes, because if we eliminate teachers, then we have to increase class sizes of kids. We would decrease our course offerings. We would decrease after-school academic and extracurricular activities. We would delay those technology purchases. We would delay those facility projects that I named. We would be challenged with retaining the people we have. It's a super competitive workforce in this area, and teachers and educators often leave to go to surrounding districts for better wages and or benefits. And our last choice would be to dip into our fund balance, which essentially is our mechanism for getting good credit scores and ratings and balancing our budget. Here is the actual language that will be on the ballot. Shall the school district of Cambridge, Jefferson, and Dane counties, Wisconsin be authorized to exceed the revenue limit specified in section 121.91 of Wisconsin statutes by $2.4 million beginning with the 23-24 school year for recurring purposes consisting of sustaining operating expenses, including school safety, security, maintaining class sizes, curriculum and technology updates? That is the question. Why do we need a recurring referendum, meaning that $2.4 million would continue into perpetuity? During the last decade, you saw that our revenue has been non-essential or flat at best. To help us predict and forecast our expenses, we simply need more of a stable financial outlook. The recurring referendum allows us to address those budget shortfalls and needs into the future as well. The COVID relief funding is expiring, so that's almost $1 million that we need to account for in the budget in the upcoming year. The recurring dollars mean we have the authority to go up to $2.4 million. We don't need to. So if we find that we can operate with less than that funds, we do not need to use that tax authority. For example, if in the biennium budget that happens, I think the governor is releasing it tonight, his proposal, and we get to that number in July or August, and there is new state funding available for students, then we could reduce our ask or our levy to accommodate that. That would be an ideal state. And again, the word recurring means it goes on, it does not have an expiration date. As challenging as those first few slides were to sort of talk about our conditions, the difficulty that we have endured in terms of making cuts over the last couple of years, we also want to highlight the many points of pride that we have in our school district and the value that we believe that we bring to the community. Our school district has, for the last decade, either met or exceeded expectations on the DPI state report card. That's the same measure that every school district has to report on. We exceed in that area. The U.S. Department of Education awarded us with a green ribbon last year to our elementary school. We were only 1 out of 36 schools in the entire country, so pretty commendable. The high school has been repeatedly on the U.S. World and News Report as a high-achieving high school. Our employee retention rate, which I talked about earlier, 89%, is definitely a point of pride for us, nearly double the state average in many school districts that see a lot of movement. We have Severson Learning Center that offers our exceptional outdoor and agricultural education experiences for kids, including our Koshkonong Trails Charter School that is on that property. And the Cambridge Activities Program, otherwise known as CAP, provides affordable and enriching programs for all of our community. The referendum is on April 4th. There is not another referendum on the books until 2024. So our chance to achieve what we're asking for is just this spring. If we were unsuccessful, we would need to make those budget cuts immediately, and we wouldn't be able to come back to the electors for another year. So I'm going to pause and see what questions folks have.
I just, let me start off. This last year, even though your levy went, your mill rate went down, your actual tax went up 24%.
Right.
And we took a lot of heat from that.
So do we.
And
Right.
I don't know that Oakland people are all that ecstatic about kicking in 2.4. I understand the issues you have. We desperately need a third roads person. We can't afford them. You talk about not getting increases in state funding. Let me show you some of our state funding that doesn't go up at all. So you're asking a very tough, tough environment for this. So I appreciate you coming out and doing that. There's also a lot of controversy around schools. Do you guys have any controversy, or is it? Parents are still welcome to come and talk and express things to the school board.
Absolutely. I wouldn't name a controversy that we've had in our district since the expiration of some health protocols during COVID. So I think that we have had, very civil discourse. We haven't had the sort of headlines that you might be referring to in other places. In reference to the tax bill, we did an explanation of the tax bill and did sort of the anatomy of a tax bill. It will be on our website for folks who want to see that as well, just to speak to the fact that there was, a 14% increase in property fair market value assessments in the entire state of Wisconsin. In Oakland, Christiana, the Village, those were more like 18, 20, and 22%. Again, if you look at your fair market value from a year ago on your last tax bill into the fair market value on your tax bill from this year, you're going to see some of that difference and how that actually played out in the tax rate that occurred. Cooked into that part on the school or on the tax bill that says schools is inclusive of a lot of different features, not just schools. It's challenging for school districts because we have to carry that weight, even though municipalities have also had increases that are baked into that part of that, sort of name that's on the tax bill. So we did address that, and we'll continue to try to address that, and we recognize the timing is, challenging. Certainly, most taxpayers in the state experienced very similar kinds of tax bills, and I know that you're in the midst of an assessment, cycle, and those assessments don't track with a referendum cycle in April. People won't get their assessments probably, I guess, until summer, typically, is how that works in the places I've lived before. So I recognize that, and those are definitely challenges. I think that our hope is that we represent the value that we bring to the community and the value that we bring to people's property, too, by being a successful school district. And that's...
Any other questions?
It's just you're saying that you may not need to use the 2.4, but how would you, it would be the school board that would be monitoring that, make sure if you don't really need it, you don't use it?
And I would say that's always been the case. And so in the annual meeting, which will happen in August this year, that's when the board approves the budget for the coming year. That's when all those decisions are made based on actual numbers. I feel unlikely the state budget will be finalized by that time. We watch this in bienniums, right, where typically, it's ideal if it was a July timeframe. It feels like that's not going to be likely. So, I think the challenge for schools is that we don't sort of line up with the calendar fiscal year either. We're lagging in that area. So hence the, check that Susan handed me this evening. And that's just sort of the cycle of how funding goes. We don't sort of get the big pot of money in the beginning of the year. We have to cash flow borrow. We have times in the year when we don't have enough cash in our actual cash flow to make our bills. And that's a typical condition in most schools in the state of Wisconsin, unfortunately. And we're negative tertiary, which for those of you who study tax and understand that means we're property value rich with agriculture and lakes. And so our taxes don't just stay here. They go to places in the state where they don't have that same kind of land value. So there is, our state funding is based on this idea of agriculture and lakes having high values. And so for those of us who live in these areas, we're sending our taxes to other parts of the state. And hence we have to come back to you guys and ask to, help pay our bills. We advocate all the time, the Board of Education does. I do in my superintendent work to try to change that way that formula is determined, because it's very challenging, right? It pits us against you guys in this sort of, controversy around what really matters. And I think we would all say that we care about our kids, and there isn't a dispute about that. It's what's the quality and how do you do that and sustain it.
And the class sizes, what is the average class size now?
It depends on the grade level band. So under third grade, we have fewer than 18 students in a classroom setting. Over third grade, we have under 22 students in a classroom. Surrounding districts are higher than that. So those are places that you would go to increase more kids, take a teacher away, eliminate a teacher. That's where we would go to, make those budget changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Marty, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Update, Oakland Hills subdivision. I met with John Didion about a month ago at this point. We talked about a number of issues. I think that we are far enough down the road with the initial access off from Highway A that we'll be able to start the preliminary plat, which is the important part to get us moving. We talked about some ways to get a little bit higher density with some things as far as how they set up apartments, what we do for senior housing. So we'll wait and see when when we get the preliminary plat, and then have the opportunity to look at that, talk about it, and see how that's going. So, questions? Okay. Update on Faith Lutheran. I have lived this the last week. We're at a very difficult point in negotiation with the at least initial developer who has been working on it. There has been conflict this week as far as the offer and terms of contract and things. Much of it boils around the fact that in this particular section of Highway 12, we have a ridiculous setback of 200 plus feet, which makes the vast majority of that property unbuildable. And the State Department of Transportation is apparently not capable of giving anybody an answer. That's the nicest way I can say that. I did, when we were at the Towns Association a week or two ago, I talked with one state senator, one assemblyman, saying, you know, if we were as inefficient as the Department of Transportation is, we would all have been fired by our residents a long time ago. These people have no, you know, never mind. So anyway, it's been off, it's been on. Stay tuned and see what my emails and phone calls tomorrow morning. You know, if it blows up, we then have to sit back and talk about, do we want to raise this building anyway? Because it is a hazard, and it should not stay there. So
The setback is because of what was originally a proposed 4-lane coming through there.
And the whole issue takes time. If the builder applies, a way we can do it is we can force the state's hand by applying for a variance.
Mhm.
So that has to come to Plan Committee. Our next meeting is February 7th, so we'd have to have drawings and paperwork and petition by the first of the month. That would come to our next meeting on the 21st of March. So then it goes off to the county, and they've got Planning and Zoning Committee, and then the county board. So you're looking at something that in its simplest, if we all work hard, would not be done until the end of April. At that point, the state still has 90 days to then say, we don't like this, or we want this, or we don't want this at all. So, you know, trying to negotiate a contract for sale with this kind of time limit is really kind of difficult and not well understood. We did have because we had a plan committee meeting to deal with Jarziks, we invited the developer to come in and talk to us about what they were looking to do and how they would approach it, so that we had an opportunity for informal discussion. We took no action on that, but we at least are familiar with what the developer is and what they're thinking. So it has gotten, like I say, and that's my life for the last couple, 3-4 days. So I will see how it ends up here.
So we're not involving our attorney on, it's their attorneys.
Right. We are telling them what the best we can do on, hearings and stuff, and county is saying the same thing. This is the best we can do, but we need to see plans, and so no, other than the fact that Mary did call just to reinforce to the attorney what the time limitations, because he kept saying, well, I don't see why this can't be, if you guys approve it by end of March, why can't it be done? Well, because we're not the sole approving entity on this. So I did ask Mary to call him and explain that to him.
Explain how it is.
Yeah, so, other than that, questions? Okay. Road tour, I talked with Jeff the other day. Given the way this winter has kind of been freeze, thaw, he thought that we could maybe do road tour, maybe first, second, third of March, so that we could have something for everybody to look at when we get to our March meeting. What we've done the last few years is, just a couple of us have done it, and then everybody's got the list of places to go and look. If you want, we can continue to do that. That is a little bit easier on a scheduling thing. And it's, we've created a list that way that we also know what's out there. So I am betting that Mr. Kapsner wants to do one more tour, so we'll see if he wants to do it this year. I think that just we can agree to set the date first, second, third of March with Jeff. So everybody's okay with that? We'll go with that consensus. I don't know that it needs a motion. Approval for disbursements.
I'll make a motion to approve the disbursements from check number 43740 up and to include the electronic funds transfer of 94554,677 for $1,938,1112.
193,000.
193,800.
There we go.
What's the correct?
The correct total is a total of $193,811.12.
Okay.
Not 1 million.
The comma was,
Thank you.
yeah,
Sorry,
looked like a
did you
comma.
second that?
I'll second it.
Okay. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any announcements that you're aware of?
I received the court docket after I had already put the board packets together, so that court docket is on the table tonight for your review.
Okay. And you also had a copy of Plan Committee minutes from the last couple meetings, and then a copy of an article about statewide EMS crisis, just as information. Anything else? Next meeting, March 21st at 7 p.m. Motion to adjourn.